الصلاة والسلام عليك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وافضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So we continue in reading in the fiqh of Al-Imam Al-Alama, Imam Dar Al-Hijra wal-Haramain, Sayyidina Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah wa radiyallahu anhu wa ja'alahu fi ilm al-'aliyin. This book we've been reading from called تدريب السالك لقراءة أقرب المسالك في مذهب الإمام مالك. The أقرب المسالك is one of the books that's considered to be of the later tradition. In other words, coming roughly after the 8th century or so of the Hijrah. So this one coming in the 12th century, written by Imam Abu al-Barakat, Imam Ahmed ibn Muhammad al-Dardir, radiallahu anhu. And so this book is called a Tasheel or a Tadrib. So it's kind of a stepping stone to getting to that more advanced book. And Aqrab al-Masalik is one of the books that can be considered the book of fatwa in the Maliki school. So you have books that can be intermediate books or beginners books that are kind of getting people acquainted and familiar with the madhab. And then you have other books that are books of fatwa that would give kind of the last word on rulings, because generally speaking, we say for the fatwa, or for one wants to know, well, what is Allah's ruling in this particular issue, then we say you have to go with the mu'tamad, you have to go with the most relied upon opinion, sometimes referred to as a mashhur, or the one that has been cited by the most or the greatest number of jurists, also sometimes referred to as a mufta bihi, the ones that the fatwa is given upon. So Aqrab al-Masalik, along with Mukhtasar al-Khalil, which is the other one upon which Aqrab al-Masalik is based, are considered those books in the Maliki madhab till this day. So we chose this book because it kind of gives a very broad overview of all of the abwab, all of the issues in the Maliki school, and it does so in a way that's concise and also, I would say, omitting many of the sort of ancillary issues that come up in Aqrab al-Masalik that deal with language and finer points of certain issues that may not really affect people anymore. So I think, inshallah, it's a good choice that we chose this book based upon istishara, which we asked some people their opinion, and this book was recommended as well. And it comes from the highly capable scholar of Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Hamid al-Sheikh Mubarak from the blessed city of Al-Ahsa in eastern Arabia, which still remains as a center of learning in the Arabian Peninsula for all four schools, all four madhahib, which is a rarity in these days, even though we could probably say that the Maliki school is the dominant school in that part of the world, Eastern Arabia in general. So we have reached the chapter dealing with, or the section dealing with mujibat al-wudu. For those who have the Arabic edition, that's on page 48. قال المصنف رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلوم في الدارين آمين فصل في موجبات الوضوء. So a section dealing about this issue called mujibat, which means that which necessitates wudu. So in mujib, right, min awjaba yujibu means to necessitate, right, and wajib means something that's necessary or incumbent, and then awjaba makes it a transitive verb, or a verb that now takes a direct object. So now awjaba means made necessary. Also here this is meant to mean those things that necessitate one to have a state of wudu. And he hasn't mentioned it yet, but there are three things that one needs to be in a state of tahara, wudu, or ghusl, or tayammum, whichever it may be. In other words, in a state of ritual purity, for one to perform these three things. They are any ritual prayer, whether it's an obligatory prayer like Salat al-Dhuhr, or it's a sunnah prayer like al-Witr, or it's something that's just merely recommended like rawatib, the prayers that come before and after the 5 obligatory prayers. So any type of ritual prayer, one has to be in a state of wudu. Otherwise, the prayer is not valid. لا يصح. Additionally, the Malikiya stipulate that tawaf with Kaaba which is to circumambulate the Kaaba during Umrah or Hajj, one has to be in a state of wudu for all 7 ashwat or all 7 circumambulations around the Kaaba. And then the third thing is for touching the Mus'haf, which is touching the actual pages of the Quran. Reciting the Quran, one need not be in a state of wudu. It's recommended, but to actually touch the pages, based upon the ayah, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون, no one should touch it except those in a state of purity. So in this chapter, in this section, he's going to tell us about, well, what are the things that are going to necessitate, in other words, what is going to nullify the wudu, right? What is going to put us in a state of hadath, as we went over in a previous session. And hadath means to be in a state where you need to have wudu. So he says, mujibat al-wudu thalathatu anwa'. He says that those things that necessitate the wudu, or the ritual ablution or ritual state of purity, are 3 types of things. Not 3 things, but 3 types of things. So one of the things that the Maliki do is they divide it into types. So they looked at kind of sort of a aqlani or a rational way of, well, judging by all the things that can necessitate the wudu, then what are the things then? How can we divide them and look at them? So these 3 categories, namely ahdath, number 1. Ahdath from hadath, and we said earlier, hadath means to be in a state of ritual impurity. So hadath then is that which is kind of in of itself nullifies the tahara. وهي الغائط والريح والبول والودي والمذي ودم الاستحاضة. And he gives some examples, and he mentions defecation or defecating, al-gha'it, right? And the Arabs actually they don't actually use words like that. Al-gha'it here means that, but gha'it actually means, what has been lowered of the ground, and that's how people used to go relieve themselves. It's like a lower place covered up and so forth. So they would use kind of metaphors to refer to such things. Wal-riyah, passing wind, wal-bawl, urination, wal-wadyu, which is like post-urinal fluid. In other words, also comes out of from males after urination. Wal-madhyu, which is pre-seminal fluid, which is both male and female. Wadam al-istihada. Generally, dam al-istihada, it says the blood of istihada, or here it means non-menstrual blood. Specifically, I would call it vaginal discharge, if we say dam al-istihada. But the ruling applies not just to that. So it applies, as we'll see later on, when we talk about incontinence and the exceptions for that will come into play again. But in the general ruling, anything that comes out of the rear or the forward private area while one is in a state of normal health is going to be nullifying for the wudu. That's the general principle. So those are called ahdath. Those are things in of themselves. Well, asbab, right? And then things that are causes, right? Sabab means a cause for something. What is it a cause for? There's a presumption that if you have one of these asbab, there's a presumption you may have nullified your wudu by one of the ahdath, by one of the types of hadath. There's that presumption. Whether it actually happened or not, that's not important. The important part is there's a presumption that it may have happened. And the Sharia doesn't stipulate upon us that we have to have sort of precise instrumentation hooked up to our bodies to figure out if we passed wind while we're asleep or anything like that. So there's that presumption. So the asbab هي وهي ما غطى على العقل من نوم ثقيل أو إغماء أو سكر. So that would be that which غطى على العقل, that which renders you in a state of here literally means covering of the intellect, but here it means covering of your awareness, right? Your asleep, you're unconscious. So he says nawm thaqil, which is deep sleep. And deep sleep is defined as that which is deep enough where you are not aware of what's going on around you. Like voices, maybe, your voice is going around, people are talking, things like that. And if people ask you later, do you hear us talking while you're asleep? And you said, no, I was asleep. Then that's deep sleep. And I think those who are medical practitioners would refer to it as REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, where that's where you can dream and things like that. So you're not aware of what's going on. Versus someone who's kind of in a half state between sleep and non-sleep, kind of dozing off, but still aware of what's going on. The Malikiya did not consider that to be in of itself problematic for the wudu, unless, of course, you know for sure that you have one of the ahdath, like passing wind. So heavy sleep, nom thaqil, that we just defined. Aw ighma, loss of consciousness. So this can be general anesthesia. It could be you got hit over the head, you're knocked out cold. Anything where you're going to have a loss of consciousness. So it's kind of like sleep, but in addition to sleep, anywhere that you can lose consciousness and you're not aware. Aw sukr, or inebriation, drunkenness. So drunkenness, you're not quite asleep, right? Because we say in unconsciousness, or if you're under anesthesia, there is a loss of senses of both physical sense and intellectual. You're like, it's like you're dead. You know, nothing's going on. You're in a different world, which you kind of actually are. Whereas in a drunken state, you still have you can feel and touch, but your mind is not. It's not with you. So that also would be a sabab for losing the wudu. Whether you introduced that inebriation upon yourself in a halal way or in a haram way. People are like, okay, we know the haram way, you're not supposed to drink, but what is the halal way? Halal way would be inadvertently. And I think we've said this example before. Yeah, they said, for example, if you're choking on something and the only thing accessible to clear your throat with was a bottle of wine, and there's nothing else, then you drink the wine to clear your throat. But it was your first drink, you got really buzzed, became inebriated. Then in that case, you're drunk, but you haven't incurred a sin because there was a higher priority to remove the choking to save your life. Or if inadvertently you drank something, you thought it was ginger ale and it turned out to be something else, also that would be a case where it's not a sin. You didn't incur a particular sin because you did it inadvertently. But if you actually did take a drink and you knew what was going to happen and you made tawbah and you wanted to pray afterwards, you still have to make wudu. That's the point. So that's from the asbab. Also from the asbab, لمس من يلتذ به عادة إن قصد اللذة أو وجدها. So the Maliki are kind of unique in this particular point. So here, lams, which means touching, and it means sensual touching in this sense. من يلتذ به عادة, right? Al-ladha here means sensual pleasure, or sexual. So touching someone that normally, or customarily, I should say customarily, you would feel some sort of sexual arousal as a result. إن قصد اللذة أو وجدها. One of two things. Either you intended that when you were doing the touching, or وجدها, or you found it, even though you didn't intend it. And the ruling is the same لللامس والملموس. The ruling is the same for someone who is the one being touched or the one doing the touching. And regardless of whether it's over clothes or skin on skin. And this is based upon the verse in the Quran, أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ. So there's a lot of fiqh, sort of ijtihadat around what that verse means and what that specific word means. The Hanafis understood it to be strictly sexual intercourse, so they don't have this idea of mulamasa, of nullifying the wudu. The Shafi'is took it to mean lams, which means just touching, and then they stipulate skin on skin, or skin of the palm touching, for the one who's doing the touching. So that's Shafi'is. The Malikiya, you could say, take sort of a compromise between the two, the middle road. So not quite sexual intercourse, not just mere touching, but if there was a sexual aspect to it, sexual arousal. So someone customarily would feel sexual feelings, or perhaps, so not just one that you have rights to, like a wife or a husband, but even someone, you bumped into somebody on the street, or you touched them, or maybe you went into the doctor's office and the nurse took your blood pressure and she touched your hand and you felt something low, then that would be considered something that would nullify the wudu. Why is it considered sabab? We said there's presumption here. In the first, we said there's a presumption that one of the ahdath. Here, the presumption is with sexual arousal comes the possibility of emission of sexual fluid. Not outright orgasm and ejaculation, that would be improbable, but anything that would lead up to it. Because we know the fluids that come before that, like preseminal fluid, like madhi, as he mentioned, is a possibility. Even if you know for sure that didn't happen, that's not the point. The point is there is the presumption that possibility remains. So they consider the mulamasa, in that sense, to be a nullifier of the wudu. When we get to mujibat al-ghusl, those things that require ghusl or the purificatory bath, then ejaculation, orgasm, penetration, all those things are going to be not just wudu, but also ghusl. Here we're just talking about mere touching. وَمَنْ يَتَّدُ بِهِ عَادَةً, someone that normally you would feel those feelings for. It's like a member of the opposite sex, an adult member of the opposite sex. But someone who's like a small child, or someone who's a relative, like a sister or a brother, or a son, daughter, that type of thing, that's generally excluded customarily, right? Although we live in non-customary times. ومس الذكر بلا حائل بباطن الكف أو الأصابع أو بجنبيهما. And then the third thing that's also considered to be sabab, مس الذكر. So here this is the male organ, the penis. بلا حائل بباطن الكف أو الأصابع. So this has to be skin on skin, unlike the one previously. So we said باطن الكف أو الأصابع, which is basically, if you put your hands together like this, whichever's touching, then that would be considered, if a male touches his organ with the fingers or the palm of the hand, not the back of the hand, but here, then for whatever reason in the shower by accident, then that also nullifies the wudu. And one has to make wudu from that. So those are considered asbab, those three types. وَمَا لَيْسَ بِحَدِث وَلَا سَبَبٍ. And then the third category is like not fitting in the first two. So that which is not a sabab, and not a hadath, not a cause, and not the actual thing of itself. And it is الردة أعاذنا الله منها. So apostasy, or leaving Islam, right? Because apostasy kind of nullifies everything that happened before. So if you make wudu, ready for dhuhr, you made wudu and you said, I don't know if this Islam thing is for me. And then you decide that you don't want to be Muslim anymore. And then you said, you know what, that's wrong, I should be Muslim. And then you go back and you say, do I have wudu or not wudu? No, you don't have wudu anymore. Because just like becoming Muslim erases everything that came before, also leaving Islam erases all that came before as well. So that wudu is not counted for you, and you have to renew your wudu. Adallah min dhalik, right? May Allah protect us from that. وَالشَّكْ, and doubt. Doubt about what? فإن تيقن الحدث وشك في الطهارة أو تيقنهما وشك في السابق منهما فلا وضوء عنده مطلقا. So the first scenario, فإن تيقن الحدث وشك في الطهارة. So you are sure, so here it's going to be the relationship of wudu and losing wudu. You're not sure which came first, or you're not sure you did one or not. So here in the first scenario, تيقن في الحدث. You're sure that you used the bathroom, and they're like, did I make wudu after I went to the bathroom or not? Or was that yesterday? I can't remember. So mugarrad al-shak, just enough, just the doubt at that particular point, nullifies your wudu. Then you would have to go and renew your wudu for that. This is also something that's kind of specific to the Maliki as well. The other madhahab don't look at doubt that way, they usually dismiss it. But the Malikiyah, there is a qaida fiqhiyya that says, al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak, that certainty is not removed by doubt. However, there's also another qaida that says, al-aslu bara'at al-dhimma. Bara'at al-dhimma means that if you have something that you owe, like the prayers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner of speaking, then you should be on certainty that you're doing it, right? So if there's a doubt when you're entering to that, then you should remove that doubt by doing wudu once again. And that's how Imam Malik and those who subscribe to his methodology saw it. So if تيقن الحدث وشك في الطهارة, right? You're certain that you used the restroom, but you're not certain that you made wudu after, then your wudu is nullified. أو تيقنهما وشك في السابق منهما فلا وضوء عنده مطلقا. Or you're certain you did both, right? تيقنهما, both of them. وشك في السابق منهما. However, you don't know which one did I do first. Did I use the restroom first, then I made wudu? Or did I make wudu first, then I use the restroom? I can't remember which the order. Then also that nullifies the wudu. وإن تيقن الطهارة وشك في الحدث فإن كان الشك يعتاده كل يوم أو لو مرة واحدة ألغى، وإلا فإن شك قبل الصلاة توضأ وجوبا وفي الصلاة أتمها فإن زال عنه الشك فيها أو بعدها وإلا وجب عليه الوضوء والإعادة. Okay. There's a little bit of explanation that we need to do here. So here he's saying that إن تيقن الطهارة وشك في الحدث فإن كان الشك يعتاد كل يوم ولو مرة واحدة ألغى. Here is a dispensation or a specific scenario that I would say for people who have something like OCD or something like obsessive compulsive disorder or are subject to waswasa. The Shara'i term for it is waswasa, which means that you're always thinking that you didn't do it right, you have to go back and so forth. So he's saying, إن تيقن الطهارة وشك في الحدث, if you're sure of your tahara, and this person at the same time is not sure about did they lose their wudu or not lose their wudu, فإن كان الشك يعتاد كل يوم ولو مرة واحدة ألغى. If this doubt is recurring, and he says even once a day, then you are to dismiss this doubt, right? Because if you don't dismiss it, all you're going to do is feed it, and you're going to be making wudu. And this has happened to people, right? People who spend half an hour in the bathroom making wudu because they don't think they're doing it right, and then they leave and they come back and they do it again. So the Sharia gives them a way out, and it tells them just ignore it. It's not real. Have it as exactly as you've had it, and then just pray it as normally. The same thing will come about when we talk about the prayer. Someone who always doubting, even once a day, did I pray 2 rak'ahs or did I pray 3? Generally speaking, we would say tabni ala al-aqal. You would pray, assuming you prayed the lesser number of rak'ahs, and then if you wind up doing one extra, that's better than not doing the required amount. However, someone who's doubting even once a day in one of the 5 prayers, we say no. Tabni ala al-akthar. You would pray according to the greater number. So if you're between 2 and 3, you say no, definitely it's 3. If someone is having these misgivings, this type of waswasa. So here, in terms of muwaswis, someone who has shak, there is no doubt is not considered, neither in wudu nor in the prayer. وإلا فإن شك قبل الصلاة توضأ وجوبا. This is a different mas'ala. It's not talking about the one who has a doubt. This is talking about someone, as we said earlier, if you had a doubt about one of the 2 doubts, we don't know which one came first, or you're certain you have hadath, not certain of tahara. If it happened before the prayer, then we say redo the wudu and then pray. Now, what if it happens inside the prayer? وفي الصلاة أتمها فإن زال عنه الشك فيها أو بعدها وإلا وجب عليه الوضوء والإعادة. So if I have the doubt inside the prayer, it's different than having it outside the prayer. Why the difference? Once we begin an act of worship, a ritual act of worship, then we should remain in it until we reach a point of certainty where it's not valid anymore. So we become certain that we didn't have wudu. But mugarrad al-shak, just mere doubt inside the prayer, then we remain doing the prayer because we started it already. So he says, in shak qabla salah, we said before the prayer, you renew your wudu, wujuban. You have to do it, and then you pray. But if you're inside the prayer, you continue praying and you finish the prayer. Unless inside the prayer, you have certainty that you don't have wudu. Not shak, not doubt, certainty, right? So you're inside the prayer and like, Allahu Akbar, you're praying, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have wudu. That one you don't continue because you're certain you don't have wudu. So even there's people behind you, you have to stop and go make wudu. However, if you're in the doubt thing, right? If you have doubt within the prayer, then you continue to pray or remain inside your prayer. وفي الصلاة يتمها فإن زال عنه الشك فيها أو بعدها وإلا وجب الوضوء والإعادة. So if, however, the doubt leaves you while you're still in the prayer, then you're okay. Or after you finish the prayer, you're okay. Otherwise, you finish the prayer and you said, I'm still doubtful. I can't remember which one I did first, the wudu or the tahara, right? Or I can't remember, did I actually do tahara after use the restroom or did not do it or not? Then you would have to do i'ada. Then you would repeat the prayer because the doubt didn't leave you. Allahu A'lam. So that section is Mujibat al-Wudu, which he did very kind of short and concise and brief. He did not come up with Salas al-Bawl, which I think we're going to talk about because that's important. And it's not mentioned here, it's mentioned in Sharh al-Saghir or Aqrab al-Masalik, which is the book that this book is based upon, which deals with incontinence. So incontinence can be of any type. Usually it's meant in terms of istihada, which would be non-menstrual bleeding for women or vaginal discharge. But it can also happen frequent or uncontrolled urination or passing of wind or even la qadar Allah defecation. So it could be any of those things. You can have incontinence. In other words, when there is this type of discharge and it's not controllable for whatever reason. So generally speaking, that would be a nullifier of wudu. However, the Maliki say if it's a chronic condition, and I'll define chronic in a second, if it's a chronic condition, it does not nullify wudu. So technically, if it's chronic, you don't have to renew your wudu. It's only recommended to renew the wudu upon each prayer. In other words, to pray the prayer and then go and pray. And our teachers, our shuyukh, they said, and then when you do that and you're praying and then drops of blood fall on the prayer rug, continue praying. Doesn't matter because you have the valid dispensation at that point, as long as it's chronic incontinence. So chronic incontinence then is defined as that which is chronic to the degree that it happens most of the time or throughout the 5 prayer times. So every time, like before a prayer, and you check and you see was there a discharge or not, and you find that for half of the time or more, so 3 out of the 5 prayers, for example, when you check and you find that yes there was, then you have the excuse or you have the rukhsa, the dispensation, where you don't have to renew your wudu every time it happens. There's only the recommendation that you do it when you're about to pray. Additionally, I don't think it was mentioned in the earlier chapter, but in terms of change of clothes or underwear, also you don't have to do that if it happens once a day or more. So there's no need. It's also considered to be something that, since it's a chronic condition, then one does not have to change their clothes or underwear. And I'm not aware that the other schools actually have that dispensation. I believe that the other schools consider incontinence of whatever variety, whether chronic or otherwise, to be a nullifier of wudu. Radiallahu anhu, Imam Malik. والأئمة, all of them too. فصل في آداب قضاء الحاجة والاستنجاء. this section deals with the etiquettes or the adab of qada al-haja, of relieving oneself, wal istinja, and wiping and cleaning afterwards. Some people who are not familiar with Islam will come to a chapter like this and be like, look how oppressive your religion is. It even tells you how to use the bathroom and how to clean yourself and this type of thing. And, well, I would say that that's kind of the beauty of Islam, that it even, and it comes to these, what we consider to be very sort of personal sorts of issues, but the Sharia and the Prophet ﷺ didn't even leave that stone unturned, no pun intended, because we're going to talk about stones in a second, but he covered that as well. So, and I think it's a beautiful thing, that there's a link between external hygiene, right, and internal purity. And part of that external hygiene is that filth must be removed. And there's a parallel to that in internal purity. So just like there's the filth and excrement of the exterior kind, there's also filth and excrement of the interior kind. So that kind of duality or parallel nature of the internal and the external, the interior and the exterior, the hidden and the overt and so forth is an important theme within the deen. So he says, يشرع لمريد الحاجة التباعد وإعداد المزيل. Again, remember, they're always talking about their customs, right? And most of the time they're going to be talking about what it was like for them. So in most pre-modern books, we don't have a regular lavatory, restroom, whatever you want to call it, bathroom, WC. It's always in the pre-modern area that they have to go somewhere. They have to leave. And before they even had outhouses, there was just no house. It was just like out in nature. So he's kind of addressing that, but we'll talk about that, talk about our circumstances as well. So yushra'u, so it's then seen or permissible for murid al-haja, or is prescribed for the one who's seeking to relieve oneself. At-taba'ud. Taba'ud means moving far away from where people would congregate, right? And in many rural communities throughout the world, people still go and do that out in the open. So taba'ud means to be far away, right? Not to be in a place where human beings would normally come upon that place. So not to be near a major artery or thoroughfare or road or anything like that, but to be somewhere that will not be a nuisance to someone else, and somewhere that you should not be seen as well, obviously. وَإِعْدَادُ الْمُزِيلِ, and to bring with you al-muzil, to bring with you that which you're going to remove the filth and excrement and clean yourself by. وَقَوْلُ اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الخبث والخبائث قبل الدخول إن أعد وإلا فقبل الجلوس. So also to say the dua, اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الخبث والخبائث, right? And the khubath wal khaba'ith are the jinn or certain members of the jinn who kind of like to hang out in open, faraway areas from human beings. So it's good to say that dua because you don't want to run into them. Al-khubath wal khaba'ith, to seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قبل الدخول إن أعد وإلا فقبل الجلوس, right? Either before you head out, if you remember, are you ready to do that, or before you sit down to say that hadith. وتقديم اليسرى وتغطية الرأس واعتماد على اليسرى. تقديم اليسرى means if you're entering into a particular place, to enter with the left foot. So the general principle is when we enter into honorable places, we enter with the right first and exit with the left first, like a masjid, like a house. And in places that are not honorable, in that sense, like the restroom, we enter with the left and exit with the right first. Or like the marketplace or the mall, these are also considered to be places that are not honorable. So you enter with the left and exit with the right. That's the adab. وَتَخْدِيَةُ الرَّأْسِ, and covering one's head, covering one's hair if possible. And that, I believe, applies whether you're in a closed restroom or you're out in the open. وَاعْتِمَادُ عَلَى الْيُسْرَى, right? Here, this is if you're sitting in a, I don't know how to describe it, but not a, not a toilet seat, but like just where you have to support yourself. Yeah, where you have to squat. Then you would sit الاعتماد على اليسرى. Then you would put more pressure on your left side when you're sitting. وبل اليد قبل لقي الأذى وغسلها كتراب بعده. Right, and also washing the hands before you remove the excrement, and also actually washing it afterwards with anything, water especially, or even dirt if it's not available. ويجب استفراغ ما في المخرج بسلت لذكر أو لتر خفيفين. This is for males specifically. استفراغ ما في المخرج. So for the male after urination, then it's important that there's no more urine left. So you don't want to have post-urinal drip after using the restroom for the male, which is quite common actually. Most people don't really do that and they don't know how to do it. And so when they get up, they find that there's drops of urine on the toilet bowl because they didn't actually properly do this. So this is called a salt wa natr. So salt is to apply gentle pressure, right, like that, so as to squeeze out any excess urine. When natr is slight shaking, so that if there is excess urine, it comes out. And then that way you don't get up and then you walk around and then some drops come out and you just lost your wudu after you've already done the wudu. Khafifain, right? Lightly, right? Not aggressively, but a light type of kind. For some men or boys, and we should be teaching our boys this, they may not be able to get rid of the excess urine until they stand up a little bit, which is another issue that he doesn't mention here. I don't think so. But for both males and females, one should relieve themselves sitting down. Even males should not use the stand-up public urinal. It's against the adab, and to be honest with you, it's kind of filthy and disgusting at the same time. Because you have this white porcelain thing in front of you, and then you got like the splash factor going on. So you hit that thing and it comes back at you, and all those things would be kind of problematic. So it should be done sitting position, not standing, both for males and females. And then males also who stand and use a toilet bowl also is problematic because invariably they miss, and then you got kind of the urine all around the rim of the toilet. So one should do it while sitting down. And he mentions later on that if you're even out in the open somewhere, you avoid urinating in a place where it's going to splash back at you. So like, smooth rock, for example, if it hits, it'll come back. So all of this to avoid the najasa coming back at one. واتباعه أو إتباعه بماء في بول امرأة أو واستحاضة ومني ومذي ومنتشر عم جل حشفتي من البول أو وصل إلى المقعد من غائط. So generally speaking, if you have access to water, you should always use water. You should always clean with water. But sometimes you don't have access to. But then there are certain things that require water. So here he's saying the things that require water in order for it to be طاهر اتباع بماء في بول امرأة. So a woman urinating needs to use to clean with water, unlike the man. واستحاضة, and also any vaginal discharge also should be cleansed with water. ومني ومذي, and anything of a sexual nature, sexual fluid, whether it's pre-seminal fluid or many, semen or ejaculative fluid, then also that has to be cleaned with water. And obviously you're going to need a ghusl if it's many, if it's ejaculation, but that definitely has to be cleaned with water. So even pre-seminal fluid, right, which is not full-on ejaculation orgasm, but something that precedes it. You don't have to take a shower for a man or woman, but you have to wash the area with water. ومنتشر عم جل الحشفة من البول. Or for a male, if they urinated but somehow they kind of splashed on or spread all over the place, then they have to wash the whole organ with water, not just white. أو وصل إلى المقعد من غائط, or in terms of defecation, that the excrement kind of spread around, not just the anus, but it's like all over the place. So like maybe a diarrhea situation or something like that. Then water has to be used in those scenarios. Otherwise, anything dry and clean, toilet paper included, which he's going to talk about, which is called istijmar, right? Like rocks in their time period, it would suffice. So he says, وَيَكْفِي فِي غَيْرِ ذَلِكَ istijmar, as we said. And outside of these scenarios, then istijmar, which is to wipe with something solid, بطاهر يابس منق وليكن غير مؤذن ومحترم لشرف أو طعم أو حق لغير. So if it's something that is clean, it's dry, right? Shouldn't be wet, because that will just spread the najasa. So don't wet the toilet paper and then wipe before you've actually washed with water, because you just wind up spreading it. طاهر يابس, so dry. منقن, right? منقن من النقي, يعني it can clean it, not something that's going to be harmful. وليكن غير مؤذن, right? Not harmful, so not something sharp, obviously. ومحترم, and not something that's noble or respectable. لشرف, right? Something that's sharif, right? I wouldn't use newspaper, for example, whatever language is written on it, because language is sacred, right? Especially the Arabic language, Allah, because you may even have Allah's name and things, and you're using that. Definitely not. أو طعم, or something that's usually eaten, right? So not like watermelon rinds or something like that. أو حق لغير, or something that is someone else's, right? It's not your milk. It's not, so your neighbor's fence, no, belongs to him, and it's kind of gross at the same time. ويزاد للوتر بعدما أنقى من شفع إلى 7 ويستحب اتباعه بالماء وهو أفضل للمقتصر. And it's recommended يزاد للوتر, right, to do it an odd number of times. بعدما أنقى من شفع إلى 7, right, after you've cleaned the area, right, if it was an even number of times, but don't go above 7, because then we're getting into waswasa territory, right, OCD territory. So 7 wipes or so forth should be after you've determined it's clean, obviously, and 7 should be more than sufficient. ويستحب اتباعه بالماء, and it's also recommended after the dry wiping that you use water, right? وهو أفضل للمقتصر, and it's also better for the one who's just trying to do, an abbreviated thing and not spend a lot of time. Then water is always the best. So what people use today, like water bottles and some countries of shafat, the bidet, yeah, like bidets and things like that, or sprays. I would recommend, for people who have the means to do so, to install a type of bidet. It's just much cleaner and easier to use. And also for the, one of the things also we should teach our children is this at a very early age, things that have to do with this type of bodily hygiene and things like that, because adab in those things at an early age will lead to adab in bigger things later on. So namely the way that they eat food, right? How to eat properly and chew their food, and only take as much as they're going to eat, and not to overeat, and to wait to eat before the other elders at the table have started to eat, and see if they need something first, and all those type of adab. When they're taught at a young age and instilled at a young age, then it leads to better and greater adab when they get older. And part of that also is how to go and use the bathroom, right? How many of us actually spend the time with the kids to see, are they doing it right, or we just kind of assume that their Islamic studies teacher taught them? Maybe they didn't, or maybe they don't know themselves. I think that many Muslims don't know how to do this properly, right? If we're not doing this properly, then what else are we? Are we muqassir? What else are we negligent? ويحرم فيه استقبال واستدبار بفضاء دون ساتر. ويحرم, it's haram, it's also su adab, to face the qibla or to have your back towards the qibla. في فضاء أو بفضاء, when you're out in the open. doing a satir. If you're in your house, in your restroom, in your bathroom, in your private bathroom, then that just doesn't apply, right? You don't have to sit sideways on your toilet because you think you're facing the qibla. But if you're out in the open and you just happen to be in that situation, then to the best of your ability, determine where the qibla is and then face sideways to that, right? Don't face it and don't have your back to it, to the qibla. وجلوس بطريق ومورد وحيث يستشرق الناس ويستظلون. And also to avoid on a major path or road or people coming, and also where people go to take shade or go to take rest, anything where people are going to be congregating, then you have to avoid that area if you're out in the open. ودخول بمصحف أو بعضه فإن اضطر فبساتر. And also to do having a mushaf or a Quran, or I say anything that's written in ayah of the Quran or a verse or Allah's name, don't bring it in the bathroom with you. So if you have like ladies have jewelry or a necklace, or a man has a ring that has something written on it, it's best to kind of, at least, as he says here, if you don't have a choice, put it in your pocket or in your purse or something like that, so it's not kind of on you when you're doing it. ويكره الذكر فيه ودخول به. And also to mention Allah's name while you are inside, right? Or to actively, the dhikr al-lisan is what he's talking about, the dhikr of the tongue, which is to, mentions Allah. It's not the time to take your subha and pass the time. But dhikr al-qalb jari, right? Dhikr al-qalb is the remembrance of the heart. And, even in such a situation, we don't want our heart to be farid or to be empty from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in that time. But reciting Quran or verses and something like that, then you should refrain from that. ويندب, and it's recommended, قوله بعد الخروج غفرانك والحمد لله الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني. And after you're finished, to say غفرانك, seeking your forgiveness, Ya Allah. And also in another hadith it was mentioned, الحمد لله الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني. Praise to the one who has relieved me of the adha, of that which is harmful, and has pardoned me. وعافاني. And he doesn't mention it here. They probably couldn't even think of this at the time, but I would say reading material and surfing the internet on your phone, talking on the phone, talking to people, which people do, right? All those sorts of things, because the idea is to spend the minimum amount of time that you need to spend in there. It's not a place like to hang out and have a conversation with somebody or read the magazines or read the newspaper, even though it's become very commonplace. These are all things that are a violation of adab, at the very least, violation of our comportment. And the fact that we have to relieve ourselves and we won't have to do that in the next life, inshallah, in Jannah, is a sign that this is dar fana, right? This is a place of temporality, and it's ephemeral and it's imperfect. And in the sense, not imperfect that Allah created it with an intention of imperfection, but it's perfect in the way that Allah created it. But compared to the next life and what we anticipate of the next life, it's not like that. And these are all reminders, right? A reminder that no matter how high and mighty and how many people you rule over, how many people you influence on Instagram, at the end of the day or in the beginning of the day, you go into the bathroom just like everybody else, and and what comes out of you is just as gross as as anything that you can imagine, and that's part of who you are, part of who we are. So the Bani Adam, the children and sons and daughters of Adam, they can inspire to be something quite remarkable, right? Even to be elevated to be amongst the angels or higher than them, based upon the choices that we make, but also to keep us grounded and to recall that we also are temporal creatures of this earth, of the clay, of the soil, right? And we will return to that clay and the soil. So to be balanced between those two things, it's an important thing. As Abu al-Atahiya said, in everything there's a sign. to indicate that he is the one Azza wa Jal. So we will conclude here for tonight, inshallah, until next time when we will begin with the integrals of wudu, the next chapter for all the wudu. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ashabi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
يا رسول الله